Hello, Growth Mentor Summit peoples. Hello. Thank you so much for joining this talk. I am so excited to talk to you guys today about email marketing lessons from seven-figure companies. And part of the reason why I'm really excited is because I am so sick of presentations that talk about a bunch of high-level theoretical things. I want to give a presentation that talks about real numbers and real data and real insights. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to walk you through quite a bit. So let's look at what we're going to learn. 5 key things you're going to learn today: how to optimize your email forms for conversions, best practices for sending effective emails, email metrics and baselines to compare, automatic email funnel strategies, and then how to keep your list clean and maintain that quality. Now, all of these things are based on actual data. And if you notice by looking at these 5 different things, it's kind of like a funnel, right? So first you start by collecting, then you start by sending, then you start by measuring and iterating, and then you move into the automation aspect, and then you move into the maintenance area. Okay, so we're going to talk about all those things. Now, before we jump in, let me just give you a quick hello and official welcome to me. So I was employee number 11 at Student Loan Hero. My name is David Kelly. I was the first full-time marketer focused exclusively on email marketing at the beginning, and then I branched to different areas. And I grew email marketing to a 7-figure channel. And then I moved to marketing for Sumo, helped manage their list, and now I'm the general manager for Sumo Labs, which is a skunkworks division of Sumo Group, which you might recognize from AppSumo, Sumo.com. We built King Sumo and the new tool SendFox, which is actually about 18 months old at this point. But you know, when you're 18 months old as an infant, you can still say you're new. So we're new in the same way, but we actually just hit about $1 million in revenue. So we're pacing at a great pace, and I have a lot to share about what we've learned from email marketing by running an email marketing company. Okay, now as we start to dive in, want to get something out of the way, and that is a reality check on email. There's consistently information about email being dead, and everyone's heard that beaten to death, especially in the growth field, right? It's like all these hot growth metrics come out, but are they better than email? And I'm not here to tell you yes or no definitively, but what I am here to say is email is one of the best ways to get results for growth-minded individuals. And here's proof, okay? Here's something that you probably wouldn't expect. Now, this email is an email that we sent for Noah's channel, OK Dork, Noah Kagan being the CEO and co-founder of Sumo Group. And what this email shows is a little different than what people would expect from a very hard-hitting sales email. It was simply an ask for donations with a very personal story at the top, and the results were $30,000 worth of donations. And the reason why I want to show this to you is it's a little different than what we've come to expect from email, right? I'm sure a lot of email presentations you've seen, or a lot of email marketers are like, hey, look at these sales conversions, look at this sales funnel I built perfectly. And a lot of them are very cookie cutter, and a lot of them are very much the same. And I wanted to show you guys something that was different, right? I want to show you guys something that email historically you might not know can do, but it does show just the reach of email. So maybe you want to apply growth to a nonprofit, or maybe you want to apply it to something different than the normal business, and it can work for that. Or if you just want to take these principles and apply it to just a profit-driven company, that's also great too, and we'll talk about those. All right, so here are some of those ways that email marketing can get results for some of the typical types of companies, right? So in the upper left, we have free users to Sumo.com. Bottom left, we have KingSumo.com, our other product. And then the side, we have generating revenue and web sessions for Student Loan Hero through email marketing specifically. So there are a lot of different things email can do. You can drive donations. You can drive free users. You can drive app signups, paid signups, revenue, web sessions. The list goes on and on. So it's really a matter of just fitting it into the type of system that you want to fit it into. Okay, so let's dive into these 5 strategies. Okay, so the top of the funnel, like we talked about, is optimizing email forms. Now, if you think of it through a funnel, the way we try to think of things at Sumo Group is everything is focused on simplicity and everything drives back to the goal. So when we think of optimizing email forms, we think of using Google Analytics to help us make data-based decisions, data-driven decisions. Now, for a lot of you growth marketers out there, this is super, super obvious that Google Analytics has a ton of data. But a lot of times people actually don't put two and two together and think of how can I utilize Google Analytics into my email marketing system or flow. So here's what we do for a few of our different websites and a few of our different properties. So we define the pop-up time slightly less than average on the page for a specific page or for the site. And the reason we do that is because morally, it's kind of annoying for us to go to websites and see pop-ups after like 5 seconds, right? It's like, what do you even have to look at the website after 5 seconds to understand if you like that site or not? So we try to keep it slightly below the average time on page. Sometimes we'll do it slightly, let's say, faster, but we will never aim to do it immediately. It's just something that we see kind of turns us off quite a bit. But then the other aspect I want to talk about, which is more on the logistical aspect of how you take your content, is looking at your most popular content and then turning it into a PDF or opt-in carrot, right? So here on the right-hand side, check out some of these most popular articles on Noah Kagan's OK Dork, right? You have Walked Out on Tony Robbins, you have Not Eating, you have LinkedIn publishing success. All of these are shown by Google Analytics to be some of our most popular content. So when we determine our most popular content, we can take those content pieces, use a tool like Beacon, and create a supplementary PDF that helps people learn more. And we know it's popular because it's pre-validated as a piece of content that's very successful. So we'll utilize our content instead of guessing and being like, oh yeah, we should create this PDF or we should do this thing or what have you. We take it knowing it's popular, and we want to make sure that we're winning right out of the gate. So we want to make sure that we're not taking as many guesses as historically other people may have. Okay, now let me get a sip of water before I go into this one. All right, here we go. So launching the pop-up, tip number 2. There are a ton of tools out there to use a pop-up, right? So Sumo.com, obviously I work for them, use their tool, but OptiMonster is also great. Thrive Leads is also great. And what we do notice is simple design and copy that resonates with users is a win. So this pop-up on the right-hand side got a 50% opt-in rate. And to put it into perspective, an average pop-up, which we'll talk about in a little bit, Core Metrics, gets about 2% to 3%. So this is far and away better than most pop-ups. Imagine if instead of getting 2 out of 100 people to give you their email address, you got 50 out of 100 people. And then imagine how that compounds over time. That is a massive difference for an email list. And part of the reason why is we kept it very simple. And we also use the emphasis, like I mentioned on the last slide, hey, let's take a popular piece of content. On that popular piece of content, let's take a related PDF that we can generate or a related piece of content upgrade that we can generate, and let's make it part of that pop-up offer. So want to make sure it's very compelling, and that's what we focus on. All right, so right around average pop-up rates, we're going to start talking about core metrics and key metrics and some baselines. And the reason why these things are important is we get the question all the time, right? Is this a good pop-up rate? Is this a good opt-in rate? Is this a good XYZ? And some of those questions are overrated. But at the same time, it's also good to understand baselines so you know how things compare and you know how to iterate and optimize over time, right? So when you're trying to get your pop-up right, here is just kind of some data that you can use to analyze if your pop-up is moving in the right direction. So the average pop-up rate, 2.9% across all pop-ups we measured, top 50%, about 2%, top 10%, about 6.5%, okay? And part of the thing we focus on too is if you're in the top 10%, and I think this is true of growth hacking and growth in general, there are bigger wins to focus on. So do you want to keep focus on trying to get to the top 1%? Do you want to keep optimizing to the nth degree and spend hours upon hours upon hours upon hours for an incremental result? Maybe, because you enjoy doing that, and that's okay. But business is really a matter of prioritization and focus. So what are the biggest wins that you can be doing at any given time? And This is why also baselines are important, because if you say, hey, I'm getting 6.5%, great, move on to a pop-up for another page or move on to another aspect of your growth marketing. Okay, now let's jump down to the next slide. So step 2, testing your email. So now you have your forms created, you have a concept of how to create successful forms, and we're going to talk about using and sending and testing emails. So as a former copywriter, I think I'm required by law to give some anecdotes about copywriting. And really the biggest thing I noticed about copywriting, and it's so weird to see, is that anyone who wants to write copy almost always writes their copy at first like they're writing a dissertation or a paper in school. And it does make sense because we're used to writing a lot for school, and that's kind of how our mind is driven. But the way we think about copy, the way I think about copy is, hey, let's pretend I'm writing this to a friend. Like, what are some casual words I'd use? How would I relate to them personally? What are things I would do to make this more one-on-one focus? And especially in a world of inauthenticity nowadays, where there's so much content, so much of it is pumped out by some content farm, so much of it is clickbait, a lot of it doesn't have substance. I think someone can really stand out by being a little more personal. Now, the second rule is look at engagement, open rate, click rate, replies, and test accordingly. And what that means is there are some people who write really serious content, right? Ramit Sethi, who I used to work for, is really long flowing, writes long content. Noah Kagan, who I work for now, writes very short content. You have someone like Ryan Holiday who writes long content. You have someone like Shane Snow who writes long content and a little more fun of a voice. So there are so many people out there that write different types of content. And it isn't to say one is better than the other. It's to say what suits your audience, what speaks to you, and then what gets results that you want to get. So look at the open rate, look at the click rate, look at the replies you're getting, any other key metrics you can track, and then test accordingly and see what you need to emphasize or shift to get the results that you want. And then the third rule, you're going to fail. It's inevitable, so don't worry too much about it. Understand that failing is part of the experience. As long as you have some type of system in place, which I think is very important to emphasize, a system in place or a strategy in place, then you're not failing without direction. You're failing towards something. I think a lot of people say, oh, don't worry about failing. And I admire that and I respect the courage to a certain extent. But if you're just failing without direction, I think it's going to be consistent failure. Okay, so here are 3 types of emails to send. You have simple blog posts, most popular blog posts, and then a survey using the Ask methodology. So let's dive into those. So here's an example from Sumo, actually, 2018's best e-commerce practices. So this email, again, notice the length. We talked a little bit about length of an email a moment ago. Notice the length. This is not a super long email. It has some nice tone that we use for the Sumo brand, and it got great results. Okay, so got really fun results, got really good click rate, really good open rate, and we were able to just share a blog post that we use. So a lot of people run into, what should I email? Well, what types of content are you sharing already? There are people who see your content on one channel but do not see it on another. So we wanted to share our blog content to our email list because we knew that there was not a huge cross section of people who already saw that piece of content. So you don't need to overcomplicate it. All right, and then it breaks down. Why should I read this email? Can I relate to this email? What will you actually teach? Should I really click? So when you think through an email, and I think this is important because whenever we send an email, we're always thinking, how would someone who's new at reading this, or how is someone who's reading this on a toilet or busy or somewhere where they're getting 1,000 emails a day, how would they see and feel about this email? And is it easy for them to comprehend and understand? So here's another one. This is one of my favorite emails we've actually ever sent. So this is an email about nothing. And this goes back to the personal life updates, right? So sometimes you just don't need to send something really action driven. You don't need to think too much. We sent this email just as kind of like a fun engagement email to our list. Weren't expecting any replies. We were really truthful with what we said. We really did not want anyone to reply. It was just something that we were thinking of. But when we send something like this, we still stay top of mind for our subscribers. We still engage with them, and we get them to see a bit of our personality, and we get to know them a bit better. And that's what we saw with Noah. And again, it follows the same process. What's the hook? What's the example? What's the curiosity? What should I do? And this one's a more fun email, so there aren't as many actionable things, but it's really a great process and an understanding that you don't need to send anything too insane. All right, now this is another great example that I love, and here's why. So Bony to Beastly is a great program for skinny dudes trying to gain weight. It's really targeted, very, very segmented audience. But what I really like about this email is not only did they not have anything to really say about their brand, not only did they not have any new blog posts to write, they still wanted to send an email. So what they did instead is they just collected the blog posts they've been reading recently. So notice that top paragraph there. They've been reading recently, and they shared it with their audience. So they acted as the experts, right? So be a trusted advisor for readers. They acted as the experts, which they are, and they consolidated and sent information to their subscribers, which was very, very valuable. All right. So now you wrote and sent an email, and there were some ideas we just talked about, right? You can send a personal update. You can link to blog posts. You can act as a recap source for your subscribers. Then what happens? Next is measuring results. So 2 key metrics, open rate and click rate. These are the ones that people know. And this slide, just take your screenshots, write these down, do whatever you need to, because everyone asks us these. What are the open rates I should see? What are the click rates I should see? Kind of like those pop-up rates. And these are exact numbers that we've seen at Sumo Group. So if your list is above X value, what should your open rate be? If your open rate or click rate or whatever is in this range, is that good for your list size? And you'll notice there's one thing that's kind of weird, right? The click rate over on the right-hand side for King Sumo at 10,000 and 5,000. You would expect that it'd be a little different. But it's also important to consider the types of content we're featuring. So at 5,000, we were doing a lot of heavy sales pushing because we were really trying to get people to use King Sumo, which meant we had a lower click rate. And then around 10,000, we had a good group of users. So we were pushing more content. We were doing more engagement because we didn't have to push sales as hard. All right. Now, there are 2 that I don't want you to forget, though. There are 2 that are the forgotten heroes, really, of email metrics, and that's spam and unsub rates. So everyone obsesses over open rates and click rates, and they're really good to be aware of, but these 2 are also really important. So with Gmail more and more cracking down on the negative aspects, if you can keep your spam and complaint rate on average lower than 0.2% per email, then you're doing the right thing. And that's really important because you want to make sure that you're sending to the right people who want your email, quality content. You're not using bot lists. You're not using JVZoo affiliate crap. You're sending real quality emails. Now, sometimes maybe it's a little higher, sometimes maybe a little lower, but over a decent amount of samples, you want to be able to get in this range. And then for unsubscribe rate, also very similar, 0.3, in that you want to make sure that it is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of your audience. You want to make sure that you're sending the best possible emails to people who really want them. Okay? And here's how you can test this. Here's how we test this. SendCheckIt has an email subject line tester. It's great. It uses a bunch of examples, and they pull from some data on their side to tell you if your subject line is good, if it has spam words, trap words, trigger words, and all that stuff. Mail Tester is a free tool, gives you grading on your emails, also very helpful. And then Litmus or Email on Acid are paid tools, but they give you more insight into deliverability for your email. So we use all 3 of those, and they're all very, very helpful. Okay, so now you have your email set up. You're starting to understand email marketing. You know that you have to use your forms. You know how to create decent forms, at least conceptually. Hopefully after this presentation, you put some of this into practice. You know how to write an email, you have some ideas. And again, this is just conceptually, practice makes perfect. So don't expect, going back to the copywriting core tenets, that you're going to succeed right away. And now you know the metrics and baselines to compare to as you start to dive into email marketing and you're wondering how your emails are looking. So now that we have the basics out of the way, it's time to automate. All right, so Drip Campaign, some of you might have heard of. It's an automatic email series after sign up. And basically what it does is it automates your email marketing for you, right? And there are a lot of different names for it, but it's a way to automatically push content, sales, customer research, whatever you want to do. But here's the thing. When people hear automations, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to come up with 35,000 different segments and forking and all this stuff. I need to be able to send to Joe Schmo in Albuquerque, New Mexico. None of that. None of that to start. Think about a growth mindset in general. Simplification. You have to be able to walk before you can run. And there is so much that one can do with the basics before they get to those advanced levels. Now, a quick story is I know someone who works in the sporting good industry, specifically surfboard industries, here in San Diego where I'm based, and they are so obsessed with squeezing every inch out of segmentation and automations and all these things that they can. And my feedback for them recently was like, hey, you're trying to like squeeze like milk out of like a wrung towel. Like at some point, maybe focus on making a better product. Maybe focus on these things that are going to 10x. Even if they take 2x a time, it's going to 10x a business instead of eking out every small thing. So don't worry about advanced segmentation. Let's just focus on a simple formula for a winning drip or automation. And here's the Threes Company winning drip formula. I'm very creative with names, as you can see. I just steal a bunch of popular shows, and that's really how I decided. Now, one way to do it is your first email, right? Hello, gather feedback. So, hi, welcome to my list. What's the number one thing I can teach you? Something like that. That not only gives you a good indication of who's joining your list, but it gives you ideas for writing content like blog posts, podcasts in the future. Second thing is, maybe the follow-up email is, hey, here's my best blog posts or podcast episodes or whatever. And then the third one is, thanks for being on my list. I want to let you know about a problem that I notice people need help solving. Here's my product or service that can help you. So you're not pitching them right away. You're first welcoming them. You're listening to them. Then you're providing them with great free content. So you're connecting to them, and then you're selling them. All right, so here's a great example of how we do this for Noah's List. Hey, here are 3 things that I think you might like as a hello. So we kind of combined the first email concept and the second email concept. But then we did also have a second email that was specifically related to podcast stuff, right? So here's my best stuff for email, for this email for you. And then the third thing is our sell was actually trying to hire people. So it doesn't need to be selling a service or a product specifically. We said, hey, like, here's what we're trying to do. Please help us out. So it's the ask. And here are the metrics. So we talked about metrics. All these worked out very well. And we iterated on them a lot. I think that's important. These weren't winners out of the gate. We iterated on them. We changed around the language. We changed around the copy. We had used previous automations until we got to this point. And we're actually right now even testing other automations. So the testing is very valuable for us to continue trying. In addition to what I mentioned earlier, also focusing on those bigger levers that we can. Okay, so now that you got started with that, there is some basic segmentation you can do. And I'm going to show you one thing because I think this one thing is valuable. And again, it's not going down the advanced path. It's a very basic segmentation piece. And that is setting up an email trigger. So here's how you do it in Aweber. You can also do it through SendFox, hashtag that's our company, check them out. You can do it through ConvertKit, MailChimp, all these other guys. What ends up happening is oftentimes there's a really valuable email that you want people to take action on. So here's an example of us setting up an automation trigger. And actually the image on the left is incorrect. It should be a podcast image, but I just grabbed this one because it showed the example a little more clearly. But If they clicked a podcast link, it would send them a podcast review email. So let's say that second email again was like, hey, check out my most popular podcast. And then if they clicked a link, it was like, hey, I noticed that you checked out my podcast. Can you leave a review? So this is a very simple way to do very simple segmentation without making it crazy and getting the action that you want. And then look at those results. That is nuts. That is nuts. Think about those results that we talked about a bit ago, right? Like what are good results? This is far and away the best results that we've seen from segmentation. I mean, those open rates and click rates are just insane. Okay, so now you have your email, and now you have an email system built out. How do you keep your email list clean? I don't think enough email marketers talk about this, and I mean, to be honest, it's probably because most email marketers are kind of fakers online and they haven't done much email marketing, or at least they're looking at things and it isn't statistically significant. Whatever, I could go on, but I'll stop there. So keeping your list clean is very important because here is why. All right. We talked to a Gmail anti-spam team member, and this was a few months ago. And this for me was like meeting a celebrity, right? You have a Gmail anti-spam team, and this is crazy, of like 5 dudes, basically. Like 5 dudes decide if like 60% of the internet's emails gets delivered to the inbox or spam. Like that is a crazy level of power. So of course I want to meet them, and they're like my version of Oprah. And we talked to them, and what we heard about are a few key things, and I want to share these. So engagement is becoming increasingly important in email deliverability. A lot of people are like, oh, did I use a spam word? Did I use XYZ? Did I use ABC? And think of how Google uses SEO now, and think about how they look at some of those KPIs and those signals for their SEO. And then once you think about that, it starts to make more sense that they're bringing a lot of it into their email so they can understand how long a person's reading an email, if they're scrolling, if they're replying, if they're clicking. That's why there's less and less of an opportunity for the better, in my opinion, to game the system. If people are sending crappy emails, even if they're using not like a crappy word in the subject line, Gmail is going to find out. And that's why you have every once in a while emails that get delivered to the spam box and you're like, what happened? It's partly because Gmail measures their engagement and dings them accordingly for future emails. Now, here's the thing that kind of seems to fly in the face of it, but actually makes sense when you study it more closely. Unsubscribes aren't always bad. And when they told us this, I was kind of shocked. And the reason why they said it wasn't always bad is because it makes it very easy to leave. They understand that people aren't going to want to be on lists together. So if you make it easy to leave, and that's why they have all these things like spam headers and all that stuff, then it'll be fine. It's fine. Okay? So the last thing is, though, spam is the worst thing. So sending emails to people who don't want them is bad. And misleading people is bad. So using bot lists, affiliate lists, scrape lists, et cetera, is awful. And here's a hilarious thing. So all these affiliate scammers and spammers that have historically tried to jump from ESP to ESP, thinking they're so smart, now that Gmail really cares about domain ratings and domain rankings and domain reputation, they track those domains across ESPs, and they're just going to hammer them accordingly. So the bottom line is there's a lot of logistical elements in here, right? But the bottom line is very much like Google SEO. Create quality content that you as a reader would be excited to read if you were being sent what you're writing, and you'll be okay. And it's so funny to me how simple that question is, right? Like you see people who are sending emails and they're like, why am I getting all these unsubscribes? Why is my open rate crappy? And you ask them and you're like, hey, if you were a reader, would you find value in this email? And they never answer directly. They're never like, no, but they always like beat around the bush and they're like, well, we have to send this email because like engagement is important. And it's like, okay, like the answer is no. So just send good emails and everything is avoided. Okay, now here's how you can make sure to not react though, right? Because you don't want to just react to like, oh crap, I sent a bad email, here's what's happening. Cleaning your list before sending. So at a high level, there's some elements here that are just like administrative. But what we do at a high level is this for our email list. Anyone who has joined the list longer than 3 to 6 months ago, it depends. We've tried 3, we've tried 6, both work well, so it's up to you. Anyone who's joined the list longer than 3 to 6 months ago and has not opened or has not clicked an email in that time frame, we move to a non-sending list or we delete them as subscribers. And we do that every month. And here's the reason why. If they've been on your list for 6 months or longer and they haven't opened or clicked any emails, the truth is they're just not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. And I know that's a bit sad, right? Like we work hard to get email subscribers, but what's sadder is being put into the spam folder because the engagement scores are low. Or what's sadder is sending to spam bots because we don't properly clean our list. What's more exciting is how we can attract quality subscribers. And because you're removing your subscribers, if you delete them, maybe you just remove them to a non-sending list. If you delete them, you're saving money as well on the subscribers that just don't matter. Okay? So we also will try every, let's say like a year or so, sending a re-engagement, like really awesome sale, Black Friday sale or something like that, on a secondary ESP, like a MailerLite or something that's inexpensive to send. And we'll try to engage some of those people, and then we'll typically bring like a few thousand back. Okay, so it's not huge, but it's often worth the money to try. We just don't do it often. Whew, and we made it. We did it, guys. So here's a reminder of the funnel. You start by optimizing your email forms, right? And we talked about that. We talked about focusing on the data growth mindset. Here are the types of content that's popular. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel. Let's create content upgrades, PDFs, etc., that are very similar to that. Then we talked about testing your emails. So sending emails, trial and tribulation. Let's see how these emails are performing. Let's test them and let's iterate as we need to. Knowing that we can send content emails, we can send recap emails, we can send personal greeting emails. Then we measure results and we see how everything goes and iterate as we need to. And then we automate the emails. Okay, so we automate what's happening with those drip campaigns and automations. And then forgotten but important is cleaning the list. We make sure that our list is clean, squeaky clean, and we make sure that we're sending to the right subscribers. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Any questions, you can reach me at david@sendfox.com. And we do have a special going on. And the special is on AppSumo. If you go to appsumo.com/SendFox, you can get SendFox, our email tool, for just $49, up to 5,000 subscribers for life. No more monthly fees. It's designed specifically for content creators, so feel free to check it out. Otherwise, let me know your email marketing questions. I'm happy to help out. And thanks so much for watching this Growth Mentor Summit presentation. And I hope you enjoy your other presentations. Take care.